For a closer look at the implications of these U.S. strikes, Dr. James Dorsey, Adjunct Senior Fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at NTU, joins us live. Dr. Dorsey, thank you for making the time to speak with us. Let's start off with, were you surprised by these strikes?
Not really. I think the question was all along whether Trump had already decided to attack Iran, or whether this was a ruse, basically to give it, to catch Iran off guard. Clearly, it was the second. The question now is, how successful was this? Trump has called it very successful. We don't know how much of these facilities were above ground, how much were below ground. We don't know how deep below ground they were. We don't know if to fully destroy them, further raids are necessary. And we don't know what the Iranians evacuated from those sites in anticipation of a U.S. strike.
How concerned should we be that the U.S. is now involved militarily in this conflict between Israel and Iran?
I think Trump himself paved the road for further entanglement by saying in his remarks to the nation that if Iran, for all practical purposes, does not surrender to U.S. terms, there will be further attacks. And obviously, Iran will respond to these attacks. I think in the initial phase, it will try to carefully calibrate those attacks so as not to close the door to further negotiations. But if you're going to see further U.S. attacks, partly depending on what they target in Iran, I think you're going to see an escalation that would embroil the U.S.
We're definitely expecting Iran to retaliate, as you say, but Mr. Trump has called on Tehran to now end the war. Will these U.S. military strikes really be able to bring Iran to the negotiating table?
It's doubtful. Basically, the strikes are an extension of Trump's negotiating strategy. Trump's negotiating strategy, certainly with Iran, has been, I'm telling you what you're going to do. You're going to do this, and there's going to be hell to pay if you don't do it. The Iranians don't respond very well to this. They've heard this for 46 years since the Islamic Republic was founded. There's no reason why they're going to respond to it or surrender for it now. Keep in mind, the Iranians don't have good options. This is a war that, in the ultimate analysis, they cannot win. But at the same time, surrendering to U.S. demands would, in effect, mean that this is a regime that would lose its last fig leaf of legitimacy. So you're going to see the Iranians fighting on, but at the same time trying to get a return to the negotiating table on equitable terms.
Dr. Dorsey, Mr. Trump had earlier promised that he would end wars and bring about peace during his second term in office. But his actions clearly telling a different story. What's his strategy here?
I think, for better, for good or for bad, Trump has bought into the allegations by the Israeli prime minister, by Israeli intelligence, that Iran was very close to a nuclear weapon. That's not an assessment that his own intelligence community made, nor is it an assessment that the International Atomic Energy Agency made. Now, to be clear, Iran has two of the three building blocks for a nuclear weapon. It has the missiles, and it has the enriched uranium, as a matter of principle. But putting those two together in the third step is a very complicated process. And there's differences within the U.S. intelligence community about not only whether Iran intended to do so, but how close it was to do so. And of course, the United States was engaged with negotiations. But then again, Trump's concept of negotiations is, I tell you what to do.
So then, is this really about Iran's nuclear capabilities, or is there more to this story?
Well, I think on the background is, of course, always the issue of regime change. And the United States, and let's face it, much of the world would like to see the back of the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime hasn't done itself a lot of favors in ingratiating itself with much of the world. But I don't think that these attacks were launched to change the regime. The Israelis clearly made very clear that they thought regime change could be the result of that, but it was not the aim. The problem with the regime change, of course, is be careful what you wish for. What clearly the Americans, the Israelis would like to see is a flourishing Iranian democracy. That may not be what would come out of a regime change. It could be much more a regime of which the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is the backbone and is much more hardline towards Israel than the current regime is.
Mr. Trump had said that there are currently no new planned attacks on Iran, but he threatened that if peace does not come quickly, there are other targets that the U.S. could hit. What other targets could he be referring to? Are these also nuclear sites?
It could, your guess is as good as mine, essentially. With other words, Iran is if you wish to put it in those terms, is a target-rich country. It's got massive oil facilities. It's got infrastructure. It's got significant military installations. It's got what the Israelis already have done, institution and installations that are pillars of the regime. So, like the state-run television, the Red Crescent Society, the police headquarters in Tehran. Um, what Trump was referring to, I don't think anybody knows.
What kind of retaliation do you think Iran will go with when it comes to responding to the U.S. attacks? You did mention earlier that they may calibrate how they respond, but maybe help us understand what are their capabilities when it comes to either striking U.S. sites or Israeli sites?
I think it's going to be very difficult. Obviously, they can strike back at Israel, and they've had a certain degree, even if most of their missiles and drones have been intercepted by the Israelis, those that have not been intercepted have caused significant damage, and of course, there's an impact on the Israeli economy. Other options that the Iranians have are clearly U.S. diplomatic and military facilities in the Gulf. If they really wanted to escalate uh, Gulf oil exporting infrastructure, there's asymmetric warfare in terms of targeting U.S. and Israeli facilities or diplomatic missions not immediately in the region. And of course, there's always the option of trying to close the Strait of Hormuz, which again is a very tricky thing to do. The strait is a major global trade route, as well as a route for the flow of major oil exports and gas exports. Trying to close that down would not only drag the United States further into the war, but would also drag in certainly other Western powers.
Thank you, Dr. Dorsey, for sharing your insights with us. We were speaking to Dr. James Dorsey, Adjunct Senior Fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at NTU.